I'm Jensen, and 3 months ago I made the biggest mistake of my life. I went to a friend's sleepover party where everyone watched videos about the famous elevator game. Though the night ended with fun and jokes, the weird game ritual stuck in my mind longer than it should have. So, once I came home, I was dying to try it out. We live in an old 13-storied building. Our apartment was on the ground floor. There weren't many residents in our building, so I had the perfect opportunity to conduct the elevator game ritual without being disturbed by any other tenants. It was a quiet Sunday night. My dad passed out on the couch after heavy drinking, and my mom was at her friend's house. Making the most of the situation, I tiptoed outside and came to the lobby. Heavy rain and blowing wind were making the lobby windows tremble from time to time. I grabbed my phone and walked to the elevator at the end of the corridor. I pressed the button and the elevator door slid open, making the usual ring. Should I do this? Man, can't believe I'm doing this. I entered the elevator and closed the door. I won't be explaining the ritual in detail because it works, and I don't want anyone else to make the same mistake I made. Just for some context, let me tell you that after pressing a certain number in a particular order, the final floor you're supposed to get on is the 5th, and from there, people say a woman enters the elevator with you. So I did as I heard. I pressed the number of floors for the elevator, started going to each floor, and opened to a view of a dimly lit empty lobby. When it was time to reach the 5th floor, I chickened out in fear. Thinking there was still time to stop and back out from this ominous game, I pressed the stop button, and the elevator stopped between floors 3 and 4. I heard my breathing going faster. Damn it! I regretted being so stupid and pressed the ground floor button to go back to my room. The elevator started going down, and I felt a little relieved that somehow I managed to break the chain. But little did I know, when the number plate reached the ground floor, the elevator stopped with a sudden jerk. What the? At first, I thought the elevator went out of order because of my experiment. So I went to press the alarm in panic. But then, the door suddenly opened, and they opened to a dark, hollow space. I kid you not. Outside the elevator, there was nothing but pitch-black darkness. I immediately pressed the door closing button, but it didn't work. Drops of sweat gathered on my forehead. What have I done? What is this place? Am I in some other dimension? I screamed. Hello? Anybody out there? But I only heard my voice reverberate. Suddenly, a few lights flickered, and one by one the lights turned on, revealing an unknown floor which looked more like an office backroom. There were yellow walls and a soggy wet floor. A reeking smell of dampness and rotten filled my lungs. Am I to the basement? This must be the basement. I've never been to the basement of our building, though. The elevator was obviously out of order, so I decided to look for the stairs. I stepped out of the elevator, which was my mistake, number 2. I started walking through the pale yellow back room. It was empty. There wasn't even a single piece of furniture, not even a dustbin or a mop around, just vast empty space. With every step I took ahead, I turned back to see how small and distant the elevator was getting from me. After walking like this for God knows how many minutes, I suddenly saw this woman. She was sitting on the floor, blocking my way. Her back faced me so I couldn't see her face. Her body was trembling, and a creepy whimpering sound was taking place. She was crying. Ma'am? Excuse me? Thinking she didn't hear me, I called out a little louder this time. Ma'am? Are you all right? Her crying stopped.
I am sorry.
What? Why?
Please forgive me.
I started feeling creeped out. What are you saying? I've never met you before. Why are you apologizing?
I'm sorry for wanting to have your blood all over me.
What? I felt my stomach drop. My voice started to die down in my heart. The woman slowly got up without turning around, and then the lights went out. What the? The entire place turned pitch black again. What's happening? And just then, the lights were back on. But one thing was different. Now, the woman was arching behind, staring at me from upside down. Her hands didn't touch the floor, though, because she had no hands. Yes, she only had the upper torso followed by her skinny legs. She wore a white midi dress with stains on it. I can't explain how horrifying her body looked in that position. She started laughing hysterically while being arched like that.
I'm sorry for what I'm about to do to you.
And then she started running towards me at full speed while being arched at the back. Ah!
Here I come.
She was chasing me down like a distorted hop frog. I ran while gagging and panting for breath. All I wanted was to find the elevator and slam inside it. I could hear her stomping footsteps echoing with her harrowing laughter. I feared to look back because stumbling at that moment would have been worse. The lights began flickering and heavy winds started blowing inside that closed place. All the yellow world started dripping black, thick liquid. Even the ceilings above my head were licking too. I felt like I will drown in this hell and will never be able to get out. The woman's laughter got closer to me with each second. My legs were about to give up. I was just running from one end to the other end of the back room, as if I was in a maze. I thought, I will never get out of this infinite space. Claustrophobia started to settle in, and just then, I heard the elevator ding. Finally, I found it. Standing at the other end, the elevator was my only chance to live, but the doors now have started to close. I could see them coming close to each other, and my chance for surviving, for escaping this hell started narrowing down each second. The woman screamed from behind.
You can't escape. It's about time.
But I gathered all of my courage, all of my strength. I screamed to myself. You can do this, Jensen! You're not gonna die in this time loop! Run! Run faster! I never ran this fastest in my entire life. By an inch, my body passed the closing doors and I got in. I stumbled and fell inside the elevator out of reflex, and the doors closed behind me. I don't remember what happened after that. 2 days later, when I woke up in my bed, I saw my mom and dad sitting near me with worried faces. I came to know that my dad heard my scream from my room and went to check in, but he didn't find me there, so he came out to the lobby, and that's when the elevator door opened on our floor. He was shocked and surprised to see me lying unconscious inside the elevator. He still had no idea how he could hear my scream when I was not even in the apartment. After a terrible fever, when I finally got onto my feet, my parents asked me what exactly happened to me that night. I told them I got stuck while riding the elevator for fun and panicked once it started malfunctioning. I never told them about this woman in the backroom space where I mistook to be our apartment basement.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the video. If so, please leave a like. And also, a small percentage of people that watch my videos are actually subscribed. If you want to support this channel and make this channel reach the 1 million mark, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can change your mind later. Enjoy.
Have you ever heard of the Backrooms? The place is a parallel universe that we can all access while we sleep, whether we want to or not. In this video, we will know the story of a young man who got too close to the backrooms, and his worst mistake was to believe he was alone. The backrooms. Few internet mysteries have haunted me as much as the backrooms. For as long as I can remember, I've seen a lot of creepypastas and unbelievable internet stories. But when I heard the story of the backrooms, I knew it was real. I knew I had to know that place. For all those who don't know, have you ever dreamed of a labyrinth with a bunch of yellow offices that led to nowhere? Ever felt the smell of wet carpet in a dream? You may not even remember it, but you may have been there. Many people enter the backrooms. What not many people know is that if the dream is too deep, very few make it out. Man, I swear I've been in there. I've been in the backrooms. Are you sure it worked for you? Like me, Diego, my best friend, was also obsessed with the idea of getting into the backrooms. So when he told me he got in 2 nights in a row, I was shocked. Yeah, it's easier than you think. You just kind of have to think about it as much as you can when you go to sleep, and you'll be there. But how do you know about it if you're sleeping? Easy. You just have to have sleep paralysis. When you have sleep paralysis, you're half asleep and half awake, so you can think more rationally. I don't know, man. Isn't it dangerous? Paralysis makes dreams much deeper. Well, look at me. I'm here and nothing has happened. I guess you're right. I admit that when I tried to have a sleep paralysis that night, I was terrified. But that wasn't going to stop me from meeting the back rooms. I did everything I could to make it happen. I ate a lot and went to bed quickly, leaving the TV on at high volume. At bedtime, I followed every step Diego had given me, and after just the first try, I was in the back rooms. I knew I was dreaming, but at the same time, I felt the smell of wet carpet. I felt cold, scared, and excited. It was as if I was awake, as if I'd been transported to another world. Without fear, I walked the labyrinth of the backrooms. Everything was like in the legend. The walls were all the same. There was an aura of eternal disorientation, and my only companions were the lockers and the dead ends that occupied almost the entire maze. Was I at the beginning of the labyrinth? Was I about to leave? I began to panic. This was no longer fun. I wanted to go back home. I ran desperately through the labyrinth. Maybe I could find the exit by chance. Seconds, minutes, and hours passed, and nothing. I fell to the floor in tears, and at my worst moment, a cat approached me. Hey, cutie, what are you doing here? Oh, honey, I asked for this, but I don't think you tried to come in here. We'll find our way out together, won't we? Renewed with energy, I continued looking for the exit, much calmer and accompanied. A few minutes later, I arrived at another dead end, but with a particularity. There was a girl with her back turned at the end of it. Surely she was another lost person, so I approached her. Hey, do you need help? In response to my call, the girl turned around. At that moment, I realized that I was the one who needed help. The girl had no face, just a huge hole surrounded by teeth in a circular shape. It was as if her face was a mouth. I grabbed the cat and walked backward, slowly and carefully. The girl dropped her back to the ground, and before falling to the floor, she put her hands on the ground and stood on all fours, as if she was a kind of spider. In this position, it ran at full speed towards me, so I did the same. Whatever it was faster than me. So at a turn, I hid in a locker before it caught me. Hello? Anybody here? That voice was familiar. Was it Diego? What was he doing here? I was about to open the locker to tell him to run, but as soon as Diego was in my sight, it was too late. The The monster came out of the corner at high speed and, standing in 2 kicks, sunk its teeth into his head, lifting him up and swallowing him as if there was a bottomless hole inside of that little body. The only thing I could do was stand in the locker with the cat, watching how that being was swallowing my friend in one bite, leaving no trace. To my terror, it wasn't over there. The monster walked in my direction. I felt the sweat pouring down my forehead, over my body and my head, until I realized that something was wrong. That wasn't sweat. I looked at my hands and arms. They were full of cockroaches. My whole body was full of cockroaches. I felt them walking all over my face. There were more and more. I looked down, and to my surprise, the cat had its mouth open. The cockroaches were coming out of it. At the time, I could see how horrible red eyes were watching me from inside the animal's mouth. That was not a cat. It was just disguised as one. I wanted to scream, cry, and run desperately. I wanted to throw that horrible being out of my hands, but I couldn't. I looked up, and behind the locker, the monster was still there, standing against the locker, inspecting if anyone was nearby. I closed my eyes in tears and just prayed that everything would pass as quickly as possible. The behavior of the cockroaches had changed. They were no longer moving erratically. They were trying to get into my mouth, my nose, and my eyes. They were all over my face. I opened my eyes and the being was no longer there. This was my chance. I rammed the locker while throwing the cat as far away as possible. I crawled across the floor, pulling some cockroaches out of my face and spitting out the ones that had gotten to my mouth. When I opened my eyes, I forgot about the cockroaches. Behind the curve, the monster from before was waiting for me. He had set a trap for me. My first reaction was to run as fast as I could while the creature, on all fours, ran after me, getting closer and closer. As it was about to catch up with me, I saw a red door in front of me, and I entered before it caught me with its huge mouth. A strong light blinded me, and I felt an impact on my body. When I opened my eyes, I was full of mud, in the square, a few blocks from my house. When I entered my house, everyone was surprised. No one saw where I appeared from. No one saw me leave the house. I just appeared there. I called Diego, but no one answered. Shortly after, his parents called me to ask me if I knew anything about him. A few days later, the whole town was surrounded by missing posters with my friend's face on them. No one ever saw him again. Since that day, I avoid thinking about the backrooms at all costs, for fear of ending up there when I dream. I regret the day I became obsessed with that damned place and provoking the beings that live there. I'll warn you once again, you can all end up in the backroom. If you ever dream of that place, don't trust anyone or anything. Just look for the exit and run. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room, lying on a stretcher with the light on next to me. It took me a few minutes to understand what was happening or realize it, since I didn't really know why I was in this place. Hello? What I knew was that I was going back to my house, and suddenly I woke up there. But I didn't feel bad. My body was in perfect condition. Hello? I need help! Even though I kept calling, no one answered me. In fact, it was too quiet for a hospital, but that wasn't the strangest thing. At first glance, everything seemed normal, but if you looked closely, you could see that the walls had dirt stains. After a while, I also noticed another detail. Instead of smelling like disinfectant and medicine, the stench reaching my nostrils was a combination of moisture and metal. Without waiting any longer, I easily got up from the stretcher and walked towards the exit door. But before I could reach it, someone opened it. Tony? It was my brother. Hey, what are you doing? You need to rest. He walked over to me and pushed me back onto the stretcher as I watched him. It really was Tony. But I don't feel bad. What happened? My brother forced me to lie down. You had an accident. You should stay in bed even if you don't feel bad. That's what they told me. Tony kept smiling as he spoke. Who? What? Who said that to you? The nurses, of course. Where are they? I've been calling a lot of times and no one came. They're busy with the other patients, but don't worry, they'll come to check on you soon. The smile on Tony's face got a lot bigger. Meanwhile, I looked away and tried to get up again, but he put his hand on my chest and pushed me away. I told you not to worry. I'll be with you as long as necessary. That's not... You should rest too. You don't have to do this. Why? I'm happy to help my brother. For some reason, I was getting more and more nervous. This isn't like you. I pushed him away and quickly got up and walked back to the door. That room was starting to suffocate me, as if I were claustrophobic. Finally, I moved the door handle, but before I could open it fully, he grabbed my wrist. You have to stay. Stop it, Tony. Let go of me. You have to stay to watch him. To watch him? I thought. You have to watch him die again, over and over again, until you can't take it anymore. Suddenly, right on my brother's head, a bruise began to form, and it didn't stop growing. What? Slowly, it got darker and darker, until I noticed the wound was beginning to open through a scratch. Tony, what's going on? Brother... A lump formed in my throat the instant the scratch turned into a deep gash that split his head in two. You have to watch it again. But even so, Tony kept a smile while speaking normally. You have to stay here. No! I soon pulled my arm towards me, causing him to release it. As you want. Meanwhile, I stood frozen like a statue. By the time I reacted, half of its body had already formed, so without waiting any longer, I opened the door and closed it behind me. Shit! Soon, I began to run down the hospital corridor. The lights illuminated it perfectly. In fact, it was so shiny that it seemed like it was being cleaned every 5 minutes, but the smell of moisture and metal was becoming more noticeable. I'd been in hospitals before, so I knew I'd reach the entrance at some point, but it seemed like the hallway would never end. Even though I kept running until my legs started to hurt and I was hyperventilating, there was no end. Inevitably, I stopped and leaned against a wall to rest. Help! Please! I didn't wait for someone to come out of the rooms. I just randomly picked one and walked towards it. Fred! There, at the beginning or end of the corridor, was that thing. Do you want to get out of here, Fred? There's only 2 ways. Quickly, I opened the door and closed it behind me. The room was lit, as was everything else, but the stench of metal was more noticeable here. Hello? I slowly approached the curtain that prevented me from seeing the stretcher and removed it. Shit! The stretcher was covered in blood as the person's stomach appeared to have exploded. Fred! It looked like that thing was right behind the door. Shit! Without many options, I entered through the other door that was in the room. I thought it would be a bathroom or a closet where I would be cornered, but it actually connected to another hallway. What? Fred! As soon as I heard that thing banging on the door behind me, I quickly backed away. I can't. I was starting to collapse when I saw my salvation, This time, the corridor had an end where there were stairs. I ran towards them, and just as I started to go down, I heard it again. Fred! Fuck you! Suddenly, I heard a strange sound and felt my foot hit something. It was water. No. I couldn't get to the bottom floor, as it was completely flooded. No! Fred! I didn't have to turn around to know that that thing was there. Suddenly, I felt something pressing on my skin. The entity was passing through my body, and even if it seemed like smoke, it hurt more than anything else in the world. I've got you! I thought I was going to pass out when I closed my eyes, but instead, I opened them. I was back in a hospital room. Everything was dark, but it seemed quite normal. The real problem was that was all I could do. Watch. My body was not responding to my orders. I wanted to move. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Suddenly, I saw a shadow move in the doorway. I immediately started to feel my heart beating fast and sweat covering my skin. Not again, I thought. This time I couldn't escape. The entity began to climb on top of me until its face was right in front of mine. At that moment, I could see again its creepy smile formed by huge and pointed teeth. Fred, I told you there were only 2 ways out. This is not one of them. That thing opened its mouth and continued to approach me. Then, finally... Ah! Almost immediately, someone walked in.
Are you okay?
The nurse didn't wait for my answer. Instead, she turned her head to the right and yelled.
He woke up!
I later found out that after my brother and I were in a car accident, he died, and I was in a coma for several days. In fact, I soon remembered how I had seen him die. It's been a while and I've been able to recover from the trauma, but I still feel that something is haunting me.